we never planned this stuff. It just all kind of flows out.
Yeah, that worked out really well.
What we say to each other cannot be divisive.
Gosh, I just think that when we get so focused on walking the line and just miss so much of God's creativity.
We only created the Odd Show to have this conversation.
Right.
We're gonna say some bad things about stuff. If you're
Not bad things like,
if you're a huge Toby Mac fan,
turn it off now.
For people who are struggling with why would a God of the universe care about me individually, you are his favorite. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is The Odd Show. Let's get right into it. Here's your hosts, Bruce Bugano and Thomas Hogan.
Hey, welcome to The Odd Show. The G is silent. Hey, so we are on our third episode. We're just rocking the last couple days, just recording episode after episode, so that
I think we're going to knock out all of 2017. and then next time you guys see us, we'll be totally different people.
Yeah. Thomas will have a full beard. Maybe he'll be out of the military, and this will go away, and it'll be real. But one thing that we don't do often, and we've done a couple times since we relaunched last year,
which is, by the way, that's every year now. We're going to relaunch
every year. Actually, we do. We have a brand new intro that we're going to
relaunch every year.
We're going to relaunch with. But every once in a while, we get the opportunity to have somebody on, and to share their story, to share what they're doing and kind of how they're walking out their Christian walk and what that means in their life. And we have that today. We have one of Thomas's good friends, actually. So you want to?
So I would say good friend. I would say young friends. I don't have a lot of young friends. Okay. Everybody's my age or older.
Gotcha.
Taylor's younger than me. So this is Taylor on the line. Taylor Johnson. He's a important guy. He does important things.
Oh wow! No pressure.
Right. Oh, so we go back. He was in a young adult group I was a part of in Texas. And then he moved on
in
a long time ago,
07, right?
in olden times.
Yeah.
Back before the internet was, it was still a big deal, but back in a different time. And then he went on to go to performing arts. I don't know. He does things. He went to school for a little bit. He graduated. I don't know. Things happened. And now he's doing other crazy stuff that I don't want to introduce. I really want him to.
He's a big, huge star.
He's a star. He's a star on the rise or a falling star. Something's happening. The audience is gonna love him, I know.
Right. Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, Taylor Johnson.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I would like to say that I technically wasn't in the young adult group. I wasn't even a young adult. Just I had an older sister who was in the group, and I just kind of tagged along. And then also the majority of the conversations I would have with Thomas would be after church on Sunday mornings. And I feel like we never were fully introduced. You just started coming up to me and poking at my understanding of theology, just poking at my understanding of Christianity, and would just ask me a ton of questions. And at first I was just I don't know who you are. I don't know what's happening. But then it was just really cool. You just made me think more about and so that was the majority of how we talked would be.
It's a great interaction. I feel like my interpretation of what happened back then is a little softer light than yours.
And that's actually, ironically, how Thomas meets all of his friends.
Right, yeah.
He walks up and pokes holes in their theology.
Oh, so you're not really a Lutheran.
That's how he got his wife.
Oh, man. But yeah, then...
all time in eternity.
I went off to school. I'm a stand-up comedian. That's what I label myself as. I do stand-up and I perform a lot for churches, or I put on my own events. And then I also started doing house shows where I just kind of said, hey, if you can get 20 to 30 people together, I will come to your house and I'll do a comedy show in your living room. You tell everyone it's donation-based. And so you don't have to pay to bring me in, and just kind of whatever happens, happens. And they're really fun shows because half of the show is me telling stories about my life, and then the other half is me trying to get stories out of the audience. And so it's a lot of crowd interaction, and it's so funny to watch people share stuff about themselves with their friends that they had never mentioned before. It was a young adult group, not young adult. It was a small group of like middle-aged people who had been friends for a really long time. And I love to ask people like, who here has cried today? Or what's something weird that makes you cry? And this woman said every time she watches The Price is Right and they go, Taylor Johnson, come on down, she cries because she's just so happy for them. And it was just so funny to watch all of her friends just be like, what are you, we've never heard you talk about that before. And so, yeah, I do stand up, and all of my stand up is just like, I just try to be super honest about embarrassing or dumb things that I've done in my life. And then I always tie it back to the gospel, like the 15 minutes of every show, last 15 minutes of every show, always like tie it together with like the theme of what I'm talking about and how that ties to Jesus. And it's really cool to see how getting people to laugh makes people super comfortable and gets people like their defenses come down, and then you can just like turn it on a dime real quick from very, very funny to, oh, I'm gonna get you, like we're gonna get serious. And it's just really cool to see like how people are more open to it after laughing for like 45 minutes. So that's what I do. I travel and do stand up.
So how'd you figure out the house show thing? Because it's not like, I don't know a lot of comedians.
Right.
Like
Now
I don't
Bob Hope home
yeah,
shows.
like I don't see a lot of like, I don't know that Seinfeld started out doing home shows or
Right.
where he's doing home shows. So how'd that? I mean, it's awesome. How'd that happen?
It was something that because at the time I was just performing for churches, and it was a lot of like, I went to a Christian college, and so at first I was only performing.
That's
Yeah.
Congratulations, man.
rock and roll.
Yeah. It's crazy how it's, yeah, I don't know how. I see a lot of my friends not, and so I don't know. Yeah. So a lot of my shows were just kind of like friends had gone off and become on staff at churches, and we're like, hey, Taylor should come. And then I had like run out of those friends, and so I wasn't sure like how to get booked.
My friend resource.
And then I would have people be like, hey, you should come to my church. And I'm like, I'm not in charge of that. I don't just, oh, okay. Oh, I should. Oh, okay. I'm going to book my, like, it's up to the pastors. They have to do that. And so there's musicians do house shows a whole lot more than comedians. I've seen a few comedians do it, but it's more of like a gimmick of like, hey, we're going to record a funny video where I come to your house and perform. But a lot of musicians do it. And a woman named Shannon Curtis, she's a musician, and she wrote a book on like, here's how I do it. Here's how you can do it. Here's everything that I've learned from it. And I just like ripped off everything that she says and just made it for comedy.
Somebody else's entire life's work and just easily fit it into what you're doing.
Absolutely. Like she did all the hard work. She struggled and had to figure it all out. And I just reap all the benefits.
Yep. Right.
Do what works, man. Do what works.
Christianity.
I like that you're a stand-up comic. You do that, legit gigs and stuff like that. But you also do this house show thing. And I like the way you introduce house shows, because it's almost like you're saying, I have material, but I don't want to do material. I want to do material.
Yeah.
So it doesn't half as much material as usual.
Like when bands come to a house show, there's no interaction. They just play.
Can anybody else play the guitar?
You're like, that is awesome. Good job. And and you're like, hey, I need you to come up with half the stuff.
And you know what? Like, I'm so jealous of all musicians. Like if any musician is listening to this, I'm so sorry if this seems like, but it's got to be so much easier than what I'm doing, because at the end of a song, everyone claps, no matter what. No matter how bad the song was, everyone will clap at the end of it. That's not how it is with jokes. There's no like
this joke's
polite reaction. Yeah, and so I love getting them to tell stories, but it's so hard sometimes. It was so hard figuring out like what questions do I need to ask that will get stories out of people, and what questions aren't very good. And because like I hated growing up going to like small groups and like those type of, because it would always be like the person running it would ask you questions and you can tell they're looking for a specific answer and you have no idea what it is, or it seems like a trick question. And so like they ask a question and everyone just kind of sits there quietly for a minute, and then someone's just like, Jesus? And it's just so uncomfortable, and there's no like actual discussion happening.
No, yeah. No, yeah.
That happens. That happens in small groups. You are correct. I like that he doesn't have to do a whole thing. Because like part of I watch a lot of comedy podcasts. I really like Joe Rogan's podcast because he interviews a lot of comics.
Yeah.
And he talks a lot about the process of building jokes and working it in a crowd that you kind of doesn't matter if they like you or not, you know. And then he can really work that joke and work it until it gets. You kind of go through the same process where you work this process of asking questions and drawing it out of people. I know in leading small groups is the same way. I've seen really successful small groups, and we've trained people and walked people through the process of being a small group leader. And even after that training, they just don't get how to ask open-ended questions and really allow people the room to say what they want to say. You always feel like in a small group setting, somebody has to be saying something or you're not making progress. And that's not the case. Let people be uncomfortable for like 3 minutes while no one answers. I think that's a better way to get to a good place than it is.
Although 3 minutes of uncomfortable silence in a comedy show seems
yeah, no, we're gonna keep doing it.
seems a difficult task.
Very, very avant-garde.
Yeah. It's gonna get real experimental in here. Yeah, it's been really cool to try to figure it out, and also too, like I started doing it in September of last year. No, I guess last summer is when I just kind of put it out. I made a video and I just put it out to everybody like, hey, this is a dumb idea I have. Is anyone interested? And a ton of people responded to it. And it was so cool. Like the first time kind of doing a house show tour, it was all about figuring out how to do it. And now I really want to go back out and do more house shows because it's kind of a thing like here and there it comes up. But using it to figure out new material and using it to figure out like because it's crazy how I'll tell a story and then I'll just kind of ask like, does anyone have a story on that kind of topic? And someone else will tell a story and it will remind me of, I have another story like that. Like it's helped me like remember other things that have happened in my life that I can like joke about and tell stories about. And then I end up telling stories that I've never told before because somebody else opened up about something and it made me go like, oh, I have something similar. So it's really cool. I have no idea how they're going to go. I only have 30 minutes of material prepared. And so if nobody shares, like I'll like reach and like try to bring up old bits. But the hope is that I can fill it with everybody else's stories.
So if nobody brings anything up, you just spend the next 30 minutes like
talking about
eating chips.
Talking about Romney and Obama.
Yeah.
No, it's really topical, guys.
I had one show. It was actually for my parents. My mom wanted to host one, and I feel like it always works better when people know each other a little bit, or at least if it's like an older audience, that's important to them. Because I've done some where it's like young adults or college students, and it's just a group of strangers, and they are still more than willing to like talk about themselves or share stuff. But with hers, it was like some church friends, some work friends, some neighborhood friends, and they loved when I was talking. But anytime I would like ask them a question, it was just silence. It was just no one wanted to say a thing. And so it's just so hard to like figure out like
none of your business, Taylor.
Right? Yeah. I had a lady. The second one I ever did, I was asking about. I tell a story of my first kiss, and I asked for first kiss stories. And this woman said, "Well, my first kiss was at a pig showing competition. Like we were showing pigs." And I was like, "What?" And she was like, "Oh, we can move on." And I was like, "No, I want to hear the rest of that.
More details."
No, we do not move on.
There are layers of that.
You're going to linger here until you talk.
But she would not open up about it. And so it's just like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll never find out what that was about.
And to this day,
Taylor, in the back of Taylor's mind, how did the pig showing kiss go down?
Yeah, it'll haunt me forever.
And let's talk about just because I know that you made a string of videos about it. You live in your van.
Yes.
Oh, we didn't talk. Yeah, I wasn't gonna bring it up until he brought it up.
Oh no! I watched like 4 videos about how you live in your van
By choice.
No, by choice, not homeless.
Taylor's not homeless, people.
So I went to college, and after I graduated, I stayed around the city that I graduated, where the college was, and I became a part-time youth pastor at the church that I had already been attending, and so I was there for a while. I was like, there, and then also part-time traveling, and then it got to a place where like I couldn't give both of them the attention that they needed, and so I stepped away from the church, and then I was like trying to figure out like, okay, where am I going to live now? I moved in with my parents for a month and was just kind of like, hey, can I just live here while I try to figure this out? And I didn't know where to like plant myself, if I was going to be traveling all the time. And because my schedule was so like sporadic, I was just like taking anything I could get. Any like, hey, can you come here? Like, yes, I'll go anywhere at any time. I realized like if I had an apartment, I would never be there. And so I just started looking up on YouTube. There's a lot of people who live in vans, and they post videos on how they do it. And again, this is a pattern in my life. I just rip them off.
I think there's a lot more people out there that are in a van situation. They're like, we're not going to talk about this.
You guys have like a little
On the
society.
internet.
You guys have like a little society like Jeep does, where you wave at each other. Except that you guys do this.
I've like seen vans when I'm like walking into a store. Like I see it in a parking lot and I'm like, I think someone lives in there. Like I can just I've never actually gotten to like talk to someone and just be like, hey, do you live in yours? Can I show you mine? Like, can we compare? Like,
sure. This is everything.
Do you want to come over for coffee?
Right? Yeah.
Or because I don't have coffee in my van. But
No, it's great.
no, it's cool.
Me and my wife are obsessed with tiny houses. And so we watch a lot of renovation of small tiny houses. And one of them is this guy who does this entire interior of this van. And it's gorgeous. In the end, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've seen your setup. It's not quite the same. But
no, I'm not crafty. I'm not good with my hands. It's like bare bones, like just getting by. Like It's comfortable. But during the summer in Texas, it's kind of, I've just learned to sweat while sleeping and just be okay with that.
Yeah.
So
you know what's funny is after Thomas had scheduled this interview and we were like, hey, we're going to do this on Monday. Like he had previously, a few hours before that, had been like, hey, you know what? Like when you and I talk, I feel like maybe you should just go around and like listen to people's stories and write some stuff about it. That night because I had watched some of your videos, I had a dream that I lived in my van and just drove around and like asked people stories and wrote it down and then came back home. And I was just like, oh man, I gotta stop watching stuff on YouTube. So
wow. Well, I hope you had a good time in your dream version.
But I'm 40 years old with a family. I can't be driving around.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like one of the reasons I'm okay with doing. Like, I don't have a wife. I don't have kids. I don't have any. Like, this is the only time in my life I'll be able to do something this dumb.
No, sure.
So I'm just doing it, getting out of the way.
So kind of moving more towards serious stories.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to bring that up. So I'm going to bring that up before we get into the deeper stuff anyway, and to transition to it. Do you find it difficult? Because I've seen the stuff you talk about. Do you find the transition from hilarious, having a good time, gut-busting laughter to dark and
serious?
Not just serious, like the serious, right. The most serious of situations, dealing specifically with depression, suicide, self-doubt, condemnation, and do you find that transition difficult?
No. And it's my favorite.
No, I'm better than
I'm a dark person.
I just it's the stuff that I love to talk about. And so especially this year. So this year I'm traveling with a show called Tell a Good Story. And it's all about stories, and I tell stories and blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of a set, beginning, middle, and end experience, I guess. I don't know. But I open with it. I say 2 jokes at the beginning, and then I immediately tell them that I start by saying how awkward I am as a person, and that's how I introduce myself, and the fact that I used to get really embarrassed by how awkward I was, and I would try to run away from any sort of awkward situation for fear of getting embarrassed by it, and I would run away from all of them. And one thing that could be especially awkward and could lead to some embarrassment is being open and honest about what's going on in your life. And that was especially hard for me because from junior high into high school and into college, I dealt with depression and suicide. And that's what I say, like 2 minutes into being on stage.
Well,
and
you
it's just
start off in a dark place. That's great.
yeah. And you just feel like everyone's just kind of like, what have you done? What are you doing? Why are you putting this
guys?
and I just want to let them know, like, hey, like, I can bring this up and we can still go back to being funny. It's not going to ruin the rest of the night just because I mentioned this. Like, this is a real thing that happens. I can bring it up. Look, we're all still alive. We're all still good. And I'm going to tell you that, like, the only reason why I was able to deal with it because someone else told me about how they used to deal with it, and it was such a relief to find out I wasn't the only one. So I got to finally talk about it. And so I used to be afraid of how awkward I was in those like awkward conversations, but now like that's all I want to talk about. And so I love asking people like, who here has cried today? And finding out like, okay, what made you cry today? And sometimes it's a funny story and sometimes it isn't. And like, I want someone to try to ruin one of my shows. I want someone to try to say something too dark.
We do that every episode. Yep. So no one else gets involved.
We try and ruin every episode.
Yeah, I had a show in California where I asked like, who here has cried today? Some people raised their hand. Some people it was a song. Some people it was, they saw a picture of a baby or like, I don't know. But a guy in the back raised his hand and I called on him and he was like, my mom's cancer is back. And I just found out today and she's been fighting it for this long and we thought it was gone, but it came back. And I just felt, you just feel everyone's butts just clenched. Like everyone feels so uncomfortable. And I asked them one or two questions. And sometimes someone can bring something up, bring up something that's dark and you can still find a laugh and you're not making fun of them. Like the victim of the thing should never be the punchline, but there might still be something funny around it. But I realized with him, like, okay, there's not going to be anything funny, and that's totally okay. I'll ask him, one or more question, and then now we can just move on. And I just love just showing, like, everyone thinks that I'm on a tightrope, and the moment someone brings up something sad, I'm gonna immediately fall off. But like, we can still exist. Like, it's not gonna destroy everything. And I think I've been doing it long enough that I can go from sad to funny, and everything's gonna still be okay. And so that's my favorite part. If I did stand up without ever getting into the dark stuff, I don't know, it wouldn't be the same for me. But just showing like we can still talk about this. It's okay. Everything's okay.
I think there's a lot of symmetry there with real life. Like, ideal. I have crazy things happen in my life with my kids or my family or my job or whatever, very difficult situations, and you just deal with it. Right. It doesn't end you. It just kind of, okay, now I have to deal with this and I have to work through it and I have to figure out how I fit into that and how God fits into that and how how we're going to navigate this. I like that you're just embracing it and like, hey, this not only is this life, but it's a good part of life. Let's experience it together. That's really cool. When we push the idea of community a lot on the show. That's kind of the ulterior motive. And community itself is like that. If you really want to embrace this idea of being in the lives of other people, you're going to have to embrace the idea of being in their just messed up, jacked up, worst of possible situations.
Apart from that, all the surface level, feel good, like, hey, we can enjoy each other at a potluck is shallow.
Yeah.
Like, it's not real. And you can hide those deeper things. But when someone comes over, it's like
underneath casserole.
Yeah, underneath casserole is where it gets serious. Because you don't know what's there.
Yeah, you don't know what's going on underneath those tater tots.
Fried onions on top, and you're just like, there could be anything down there. But when someone comes over and like, hey, me and my wife are getting divorced, and we hate each other, you're like, oh,
well, now we have to deal with that.
Let's deal with that. Let's be real community. Let's be real people. And
so I see a lot of correlation between kind of what you're doing, what you're presenting for 45 minutes an hour on a stage or on a platform. That's that's the daily life of community, is being honest and open in people's lives so that you can minister to real needs, and so you can enjoy each other's company.
Right.
Like, so you can truly have that good time together and float down the river and everything's good. And then occasionally, somebody wrecks their car.
You hit a log.
Yeah, and I think it's important too. I think one fear that we have of not wanting to open up and be vulnerable to community about what we're going through is we're afraid that that's all they'll see from that point on. Like, that's all I will be. Like, I'm just the friend who's getting a divorce, and so every time they're around me, they're just gonna have to be like, "Oh man, oh, how are you?" That doesn't have to be every single conversation. Like, sometimes in community, you need to be the distraction. Like, sometimes you just need to be the person who's there to have a good time with them and to show them like you can still laugh and you're still a normal person, but and that's not all the time. Like, neither is all the time. It doesn't always have to be, "Oh boy, I'm here for you," and it doesn't always have to be, "We're just pretending like that doesn't exist for a minute." Like, it's both. Like, I don't know. I've seen it just with friends of their father passes away that day, the day that my friend from high school, his dad passed away. And I got a call from his girlfriend saying, "Hey, his dad finally died. He had brain cancer, and so they knew it was coming." And so I just immediately went over there, and he passed away in the house. And so they had gotten, an ambulance came or whatever. The body had been taken away. The family was just kind of sitting around, and it was my friend and his two younger brothers and the mom. And I realized like they hadn't had dinner yet. So I was like, let's just go to McDonald's. Let's go. And we went, and for an hour, I was just able to be like, I just made them laugh, which seems like impossible in like that, like in that night, like how could you possibly laugh? But like, just letting them know, like, this isn't how I'm going to view you. Like, that's not all you are to me. You're still a friend. We still have to live. I'm not gonna, sometimes you just don't want to think about it for 30 minutes. Right. And everything can be okay. And then, all right, now we can go back and I can ask you, like, are you okay? But that doesn't have to be every single conversation.
No, that's good.
Legit, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Good. That's why I wanted to get to that. I think that there's some value in that transition. I think for a lot of people between your everyday life and the deepest, darkest moments of life is very difficult for some people to navigate because they haven't had a lot of good examples of it. A lot of the versions of community that we see, especially in the church world, are very shallow and very superficial as to the real needs of real life. And so just knowing that, hey, this is real life should involve the people around you knowing these hurtful, harmful, ridiculous, I can't believe this is happening to me moments, and sharing that with other people so that you can not just get past it, but so you can process it well and deal with it and all that stuff. So
yeah,
I appreciate that. So now you want to get into
story. Just
like we wanted to talk about story and why story is important, and then how you utilize or how we utilize story as a part of the gospel, as a part of evangelism, as a part of just knowing God better. And
kind of working it towards that idea that you were just talking about, like you had mentioned kind of pre-show before we started the show. We were talking and you were talking about how your willingness to be open and vulnerable and honest about your struggle and this stuff makes it okay for others.
Yeah.
So like story.
Yeah, story is important.
You want to? Because I know you.
So I feel.
I know you had some stuff.
I feel story is important because it literally is everybody. Like nobody is not story people. Everybody's a story person. Nobody's like, stories are dumb. Now, certain kinds of stories I'm sure are dumb for a lot of people. Like when I try to introduce comic books to people who aren't into comic books, it is difficult. That is a hard situation. It's a hard thing to do. But then you start talking about something else deeper or more different. Everybody's a story person. You got to find the right story. And I just feel like I know that before I came to Christ, before I became the person that I believe God wanted me to be, story was this integral. I just didn't get it though. But it was this integral part of like my character and my foundation and how I saw the world was like, there's this adjacent thing going on that other people can't see. Now, I didn't know that other people could see it or they have a framework for that. I was lonely. I was a nerd. I was like in my own head like 90% of the time. And
also correcting people on their theology.
And correcting people on their theology. And so to me, like there was this, I don't know, I was constantly I love short stories. I would read these like anthologies of novels of fantasy and sci-fi and just ridiculous amount of reading because I liked this idea that it was that this story, even though I knew it wasn't real, was talking about something deeper in reality that is real, like about love or about acceptance or about, you know, the indomitable power of the human spirit or whatever, you know, like that stuff was awesome to me. And then when I came to Christ, it all started clicking. Everything fit together. It was like, why didn't I see that reality is intertwined with story? And I think that my issue with a lot of atheists really comes down to they hate story in that sense. They hate that something not real reflects something real because they don't want to admit that certain things are real. Right. Like love and beauty and symmetry. And
so you're saying atheists don't love?
They love, but they don't believe that it's a real thing.
Right.
They believe it's a conjectured thing, a construct, an abstract construct we've made out of something else. So when I started to see that it, like in my experience, not just in estimation or hope or theology, but in my experience, story is real. Even though like the story itself isn't the real thing, what the story is talking about is real. To me, like there's like such a important layer of reality in that people need to see.
And that's a basis for comedy. Like that's a basis for comedians. It's not just jokes. I mean, like most comedians that I watch, it's not just jokes. You know, it's jokes built out of story.
Yeah.
But for you kind of took it this other way where there's this kind of this other purpose for introducing this real thing into the stories that you share, right?
Yeah. All of my stories that I tell first of all, I love doing stories in my stand-up instead of just jokes because just selfishly, if you tell a joke and then no one laughs, everyone recognizes that, oh, that was the setup and that was the punchline, and then no one laughs. But if you're telling a story and nobody laughs at a part of a story, you just move on to the next part of the story. You just keep going, and nobody notices if that was supposed to be funny or not.
It's a really long joke. It's a 7-minute joke.
But yeah, I only tell true stories. And I know that some comedians will like make up a story, and that's fine. I have nothing against them. Or they'll like, I don't even want to exaggerate because I feel like I have like 4 or 5 stories that are so ridiculous that like I don't want anyone to question anything. I don't want anyone to question the truth of any of my stories by adding, like, I don't want to taint it by adding a lie. And they're all like stories where I am the bad guy, or I am an idiot, or I have done like just embarrassing stories about my life. I'm never the hero.
Ironically, those are my stories. I'm not
See, I exaggerate.
The hero.
I exaggerate, and I am the hero in all my stories.
But I just
to a degree where it's obvious.
Like you wear a cape.
Like then I stabbed her and she turned into a dragon. Okay, well obviously we're not. It's stuff in your brain.
You'll just stop at that, and then I stabbed her.
Oh man,
I want to hear that story.
So everyone else, but I'm not going to tell them.
I just think the best comedy is the kind where you can relate to it. That's not necessarily true. The comedy that I'm drawn to, that I want to do, is the stuff where you like, the laughter is almost like a relief of like, oh, I thought I was the only one who's that weird, or I thought I was the only one who. You might not have the exact same story. You might not experience the exact same thing, but like the feeling of it, or the thought, like just knowing you're not the only one who's done dumb stuff,
Right.
And just like building that community, like we're all on a level playing field here. Like I'm not some superhuman who's never done anything stupid. Or look at my weakness. Look at this embarrassing thing. Look at this thing that I've done. And just so that you can know that you're not the only one with it. And so I see like especially in scripture, like oh crap, I don't know where it is. I don't know. Well, in First Timothy,
we don't do that on the show.
Usually we quote scripture and don't know where it is.
Right.
Okay, great.
Actually, it's Webster's. I was actually quoting Webster's, and you know, our audience we know our audience pretty well, all 11 of them, and
yeah.
and they're pretty cool about not pointing out that obviously that's John 3:16. Everybody knows that. How do you not know that?
Right. So feel okay just quoting
in the Bible, in a certain place in the Bible,
right?
Closed at the moment.
I'm pretty sure it's 2 Corinthians. At the beginning, Paul is talking about.
That's narrowing it down. I would not have gone that. I'm not that bold.
Paul is basically just talking about like, hey, we want you to know, like, we had a shipwreck. Everything was going terrible. We all thought we were going to die. We thought we had like really screwed up. Like our ministry was a disaster and everything sucked. And I want to tell you about it. Like I want to make sure I tell you that story just so that you aren't like blind to how crappy things can get. And I don't know, Paul just over and over again, like, hey, I want to tell you the story of how terrible I was. One of the First Timothy. He says, God saved me not just for my sake, but so that I could be an example to others, so that they could know, like, look, if I can save this crappy dude, like, of course I can save you. And just the importance of telling your stories of how messed up you've been and how broken things can get and how dark things can get, so that other people know, like, they're not the only one. And if I can be different, like, of course things can start to change for you, and of course God can love you. And just the importance of story to show your weakness. You know, there's a part of every story in the structure. Like a story is like, you have a character, they want something, they go to try to get it, they have a ton of obstacles and a bunch of stuff in their way as they try to get it. They overcome those obstacles, and then they achieve the thing. And those obstacles, like, that's the most interesting part of the story. Like Toy Story 3 is about a bunch of toys who think they're about to die. Like there's a part of Toy Story 3 where the toys come to terms with their death and they're about to go into a furnace, and it's like the darkest thing in a kid's movie.
They're gonna die together.
Yeah. But just like, that's the most interesting part. Not them all comfortable at the beginning, not them happy at the end. It's like that dark moment. Like that's the part that like pulls on your heart. That's the most, and when you see that part of the story, it makes the ending so much more impressive, that they made it through it, that they're happy, that it has a happy ending, because you know, like that middle part where everything was going wrong, and the more the stakes are and the more it looks like they're not going to achieve, that makes the story better. And so the obstacles, the brokenness, the screwing up, like that's what makes a story. And a lot of times we cover that up. We just go, oh man, I wasn't a Christian, and I just kind of messed up, and then I met Jesus and everything's great. And it's like, well, what's that part? Tell me that part of the story. What was messed up? You know,
So,
just so people know.
It sounds like you use story to give people hope, and if you get a laugh or two along the way, cool.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, I really want to get a lot of laughs too.
Right, sure.
But the idea is hope, and the idea is it's okay to talk about this, whatever it is. Like it's totally fine, and it's normal that people deal with this, and it's not like there's something wrong with just you, that you screwed up so bad that this is a part of your life. And so, yeah, everything, all the comedy, everything is just kind of trying to point towards that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, good deal.
I love it. Well, we're kind of probably, I think we've probably done, man, 30 40 minutes.
or so.
So we'll probably start wrapping it up. What are you doing right now? Like, what are you doing now? Like, I know you're doing, you do churches, like you do conferences. Thomas said you're doing conferences, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Still doing room shows. So kind of give us a view of what you're doing, where we can find you, and if we wanted you to show up at our abode, how we go about doing that.
Yeah. So right now I'm just kind of, my business cards say, comedy in your church and in your house. I don't know why I have business cards. I've given out 2. I'm real bad at it. I'm terrible at networking. So church services, banquets, conferences. Right now I have a bunch of camps that I'm doing where I'm kind of acting as an MC and then doing stand-up one of the nights. Right now I'm traveling with a show called Tell a Good Story. And I also created with a company called Ministry Pass, a free sermon series resource that goes along with my stand-up. And so if you were to bring me into your church to perform, you can download this thing, and then you have a 3-week sermon series that follows up on the same theme as my stand-up. So it looks at 3 different times in the Bible where people tell their story, and it makes a huge impact. And you get like sermon guides, illustration ideas, graphics, videos, small group questions, and you can just download this bundle. And so it's kind of like not just, hey, let me come to your church and do my thing, but like, hey, I wanted to be of value and like give something that could be good for churches. In August, I'm going to the West Coast and doing house shows in churches there, and on the drive back, I might be going through Utah, and so that'd be cool. And what else? Oh, you just go to my website, taylorjohnsononline.com. You'd find the free sermon series there. You'd find there's just a link for house shows, and just all you would need to make one happen, how to contact me, and then there are like 3 guide videos on, if you're going to host a house show, here's what you need to know in order for the night to be successful and good. And then also, last thing, I have a YouTube channel, which in halfway through this month, I have this series that I created that's so stupid, where it has to do with stories. I felt like I was running out of stories in my stand-up, and so I wanted to try a bunch of new things in hopes of getting stories out of it. And so it's a series where I tell stories of new dumb things that I've done. Like, I hadn't drank milk in 20 years because I think milk is gross. And so I drank that, and that led me to going to a dairy farm and milking a cow and drinking milk straight from the udders. And
right. In a cup?
In a cup, yes. Yeah, I didn't just, yeah.
Oh,
and so I tell the story of how all that came about, and the dairy farmer was just a real crazy guy, and I tried to cut my own hair, and that it's just funny, like each thing starts with something small, and it just ends up, I cut my own hair, and that led me to meeting an artist who makes art with human hair. She makes clothing out of human hair.
Okay.
So it's just real weird. You can subscribe. Just go to YouTube and look up Taylor Johnson Comedian.
Wow.
It sounds to me just like mistakes were made, hilarity ensues. What in the world have I done?
That's going to be on my tombstone.
Mistakes were made.
Awesome.
Yeah, just watch on YouTube.
Yeah. So no, we appreciate you coming on the show, man. I really wanted to hear. I think more people need to hear kind of what, not just what you're doing, but your passion for it. And I have the sinking. No, that's not right.
Sneaking suspicion.
Sneaky. I have this underlying suspicion. Other words, that Christians don't do what they're most passionate about because they don't believe that it's a thing. And I'm like, in my opinion, in my heart, I just feel like you do the thing that's inside of you to do. And if it's not a thing, then it becomes a thing. And then, so I know there are a lot of people out there like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know, but I do love this. Then just do that. Like, right. I don't understand. I mean, yeah, maybe you're not going to get rich. Maybe you live in a van for a while, but like, do the thing that you're most passionate about, And to me, like, that part of your story and that part of kind of how you're blazing the trail in the direction that you feel your life needs to go is integral to understanding what you should be doing as a Christian. Like, it looks different probably for everybody, but the same thing is happening. You've got to follow that thing that's driving you to get there, and then you do it, and everybody's better for it.
Yeah, it's crazy how easy it is to do something that you want to do just by starting, just by trying it. And literally, like, that's what I learned from making these videos, especially. I don't know anyone who owns a cow. I don't know. I just put on Facebook, hey, does anyone know a cow I can milk? And I just got kind of like, yeah, I know someone who's a dairy farmer.
Yeah, I got a guy for that. I've been waiting for somebody to ask me that on Facebook for the last 15 years.
And 2 days later, I was 2 days later, I'm out there and I'm milking a cow. Or for another video that has to do with me cutting my own hair, I just put on Facebook, is anyone willing to send me their hair? Like, if you cut your hair, will you just send me? And people are just like, yeah, sure. And so people just started mailing me their hair. I just asked the question, and so it's just so funny. Like the same thing with
does the FBI get involved with that?
I hope never.
Oh my God.
Why does this man have so many?
How many people do you have in your basement?
Right. This podcast is going to be used as evidence.
Right. All of our podcasts are used as evidence.
Just so crazy. Like the same thing with house shows. I just said, here's the idea. Here's why I'd like to do it. Is anyone interested? And people were, and I just tell people all the time, like it's so easy to just do the thing. I don't know about becoming successful or getting a huge audience. I don't, like, who cares about that? If you're having fun and it's something that you wanted to do, like, your cell phone has more technology in it than the Beatles had to create an album. Like that, like, you have so much at your fingertips that you can use. That's like a free resource to just create stuff or do stuff, and just try it. Just freaking try it.
Just
That's whole
episode
just
title.
freaking try
Just freaking try it.
Nice. With Taylor Johnson. Yeah, so that's it.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's
so
the
we'll have
whole
all those
option.
links, audience, all those links will be available. Go
Okay.
to Taylor's website. Go check out his YouTube channel. In one of the videos, he has a drum, and he just dances. So there's that. Go check that out. Taylor, thank you for taking time with us, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to have you. Anything else? Parting shots before?
No, that's it.
All right.
Story is important.
Story is important. Just freaking try it.
Just freaking try it, man.
That's like the lower version of Nike's
Just do it.
Try it.
For the people who can't do it, just freaking try it.
We will not have a link to Nike, but we will have a link to Taylor.
Yeah.
So that's it. Thanks, Taylor.
Stay on.
Stay on.
Thanks for checking out The Odd Show. You can follow Bruce on Twitter at BPags2 and Thomas at BlenderZen. Remember to rate and review us on iTunes and share us with your friends. Until next time, stay odd.